Good day to each one of you. The research topic I have for my final project is intrinsic motivation. This is based on a group of volunteers at a local ministry. What is intrinsic motivation? According to Kirkman and Bradley, intrinsic motivation is that which we have within us, that drive that we have within us to accomplish a task, whatever that may be. An extrinsic motivation is something that comes from without, such as pay raises, bonuses, promise of promotion, or even negative things like fear or embarrassment or something like that from others. So intrinsic motivation is that which was that drive we have within us to complete a task, to complete a goal, or whatever it is, that drive that we have that keeps us going. I look at it as enjoyment, the enjoyment we have to go fishing, for example, or to do all the work to go camping. Well, that's an intrinsic motivation there, whereas an extrinsic motivation is that from without. A company can give extrinsic motivation. They can give bonuses, they can give pay raises, they can give things like that. A company can do that. However, an individual has to reach down with deep in themselves to find out what they love to do. Kirkman and Bradley go on to say this: although you cannot directly cause individuals to be intrinsically motivated. They said you cannot cause individuals to be intrinsically motivated. You can, however, create a condition under which they experience internal fulfillment in carrying out valued tasks. So they are saying that you cannot make somebody be intrinsically motivated, but you can create an atmosphere in which people are intrinsically motivated. Well, that brings us to my driving question, and that is, how does a leader create an environment for the board of directors as volunteers to be intrinsically motivated? How does a leader do that? How does a chairman of the board of directors do that? How does he create an atmosphere for that? Well, the local ministry that I'm working with is a place called His High Places Counseling Ministry. They bring individuals in on a weekly basis, and they house them in a campus, and they have a concentrated and intensive counseling session for a week long at a time. They have homework and things like that. It's a basic time in which they concentrate on themselves. They concentrate on them. And it's a ministry base, even though there's licensed counselors, it's a ministry base, and so they take the clinical along with the spiritual and combine those two together to create a transformational change in people. It's a very, very effective ministry. However, the board of directors, who are the founders, are in their 70s, and in the next year and a half they want to retire. The problem is they live on campus. They live in the campus with no other place to go. It is the job of the board of directors to make the transfer to make the transfer from the current directors to the new directors, with the problem, as always in any ministry, of finances, and also the current directors living on the campus. Well, it's almost imperative for someone to live on campus, because their clients stay overnight all week long. They feed them and house them and so forth. And so it's imperative for someone to be in the house with them, on the campus with them. And so the board of directors has this challenge of making this transfer to the new director from the old director. And the new director will have to have an outside house from the campus itself, and so that the current directors will be allowed to stay there and work on a part-time basis as much as they want to. On the financial end of it, there'll be a financial need for a new director, along with supplying the current directors with enough funds so that they can live off of. That will be basically their retirement. So they will be living there with somewhat of a salary from the ministry itself, along with their Social Security and so on. And so the challenge is for the board of directors. The board of directors are volunteers, and so the challenge is for them to make this transition. Well, there's three subcommittees. And a chairman of the board. The subcommittees are the financial subcommittee, in which they are to work out the finances of what the ministry can pay the current directors, and also what the ministry can pay a new director as the new director becomes available. And also there's a subcommittee that works on the job description itself. The job description itself will be different because the job description will have a director living off campus. But in time, as the apartment itself is available that's on campus, there will be a time when people will have to stay there, and probably on an alternate basis. And also there's a third subcommittee, and that is the transitional team itself. They are responsible for making sure that the current directors are taken care of physically and emotionally, but also making sure their job is also to find a director, and making sure that he would be responsible, and that he would take the responsibility to take care of the current directors. And so the board chair has his hands full with making this transition. Now, as they would admit, that is the current board of directors, the chairman included, they would admit that they do not know how to lead in the transition. They do not know. Also, the current directors admit that they do not know how to go to the next level. They don't know the starting process. The general observation is that there is a lack of motivation from the board of directors to get started. And basically, from experience, what I have seen, whether it be building a house or writing a research paper, the two hardest parts about any project is getting started and finishing up. It takes forever. If you've ever built a house, I've built 9. I used to own a company, and the hardest part is finishing up the fine work. But also, it's a very difficult part to get started as well because of the grading. A grading man has to see the finished product, and not everybody can see that. And it's very difficult to get started a lot of the times. And so there is some setbacks to intrinsic motivation, and I'd like to list those for you. One setback is a lack of clear goals. A lack of clear goals. I think it's where the board of directors are at now, that they don't have a clear goal. They don't have an end goal in mind, and so that is a major setback to intrinsic motivation. If there's no goal, there's no driver. Also, a lack of purpose. For volunteers especially, if they don't feel like they have a purpose, then their motivation is not there. Their intrinsic motivation is not there if they don't feel like they have a purpose. Also, a lack of meaningful relationships. Relationships is a huge driver to intrinsic motivation. And if they don't feel like they have meaningful relationships, that is a setback for intrinsic motivation. And it's very important for the board of directors, or the director himself, to make sure that he is involved in people's lives and coaching and mentoring through the process and to the next project as well. And then a lack of authenticity. If the board of directors or the director himself is not authentic, and volunteers sense that or know that, there is no motivation to make a difference, especially in a ministry setting. There must be authenticity from the board of directors and the director himself. And then a lack of trust. If that's a major dysfunction in any team, a lack of trust. And when one feels that there is a lack of trust, then safety, that is vulnerability, it will not happen on the board or in relationships. And then the lack of love and respect. Part of intrinsic motivation is the love that you have for whatever it is you're doing, or the respect that you get for whatever it is you're doing. And that's a huge part. It's feeling valued is what it amounts to. Now, how does a leader create an environment for the board of directors as volunteers to be intrinsically motivated? Well, the bottom line, the bottom word is empowerment. Empowerment. Kirkman and Bradley again say empowerment really is the gold standard of individual intrinsic motivation. Empowerment. Well, the chairman of the board can empower volunteers by 5 different ways. He can empower volunteers by creating an environment for volunteers in 5 different ways. Number 1, self-sufficiency. The board of directors in their subcommittees need to feel that they're self-sufficient. They don't need somebody overseeing them constantly all the time and trying to tell them what to do. It is important for people to feel like they can control and have a choice regarding their participation. And so they need to feel self-sufficient. They are capable of doing the transition, the finances, and also the job description. They're capable of doing that. They just need to feel so. And also impact. Every volunteer needs to feel like they're making a difference and that their efforts accomplishments have meaning. Also effectiveness. People respond well when they see that they are making progress on a goal. And then meaning. Their decisions are helping the organization to move forward toward its strategic mission and vision. And then relationships. Learn what the director needs to build these relationships with the board, and also the chairman of the board of directors needs to build relationships as well. Learn what inspires them. Find out what their interests are, and respond to them that way. The chairman of the board needs to have a goal for all the board. Allow the subcommittees to make decisions while coaching them and approving as a board. Be an encouragement to them as they work together. They are making a difference. Celebrate small wins along the way. Celebrate those times when they get to a particular point working towards the final goal. Celebrate the time when they can find a director, or when they have come to the conclusion in the finances, or they have finished a job description. And then be in contact with all the boards as much as possible to build relationships. Now, Jesus gave us an encouragement for intrinsic motivation. He said this in Matthew 6, verse number 31. He said, "Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear?" Extrinsic motivation. "For after all these things the Gentiles seek, for your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things." Intrinsic motivation is this: But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And Jesus said this. He was intrinsically motivated. And he said this in John chapter number 4, verse number 34. He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. He was intrinsically motivated, even to the point that food did not motivate him. Extrinsic motivation did not motivate him. Well, God bless you, and thank you very much.